Thank you. Good morning. I've never done a presentation before lunch before, so I don't know how this is going to go. Normally have time for a shot of whiskey or something, but this is quite sober me. So my name is Karl Gibson. I'm the product manager, or one of the product managers at Adobe on the Creative Cloud Enterprise team. There's 3 of us, and we report directly into the VP of Creative Cloud for Enterprise. Who here has seen an Adobe presentation at JNUC before? Okay, so a lot of people. It's a little bit strange this year. It's the very first year that either I haven't been on stage with Jody Rogers or Jody Rogers hasn't introduced me on stage. So it's a little bit strange. So a little bit of background to me. I have been with Adobe for 8 years. I initially started as a system administrator looking after the Dublin office. I was also a Apple trainer, one of the first Apple trainers in Ireland, which is more indicative of Ireland than anything else than me. And when I first started with Adobe, as I said, I was looking after IT in the Dublin office, so that's very much my background. I'm technical. And I started to transition into a systems engineer role after about 3 years in Adobe, and I was very much focused on the deployment, updating, installation for our customers. So they would engage me on large deals. We would speak to what the issues were with packaging and deploying Adobe software, and we would try to overcome them. And I at that time, was reporting into Jody Rogers. And the reason why I mentioned my background is just that was my primary focus, and I think that's why I transitioned into product management, in particular focused on the packaging and deployment tools. So this is the 4th year that we've been at JNUC, and we started sponsoring a lot of these events 4 or 5 years ago around the CS4, CS5 timeframe. And the reason why we've done it is not because we're not here to sell you anything. We don't send a salesperson to these conferences. We send a product manager to these conferences. And the reason we started doing it is that the experience with the Adobe software for so long was so poor, and we wanted to come right to the root and get and engage with IT around what their requirements were, what their issues were with the Adobe software, how we could go and how we could improve it. And that's what we've been doing, and that's why we continue to sponsor these events. We're not here to preach in any way. We're just here to engage with IT, let you know what's happened over the last couple of months or a year, how this is going to affect you as IT administrators, whether it's going to simplify things, ideally, or it's going to make things a little bit more complicated, and what the impact is going to be on IT. And there is some additional complications, which I'll go through today. So again, the primary reason why we're here is just so that you can engage with us. I mentioned that there's 3 product managers on the Creative Cloud Enterprise team, purely because it's not this huge team. We report and we look after the engineering, the sprints, the XD, all of those things reside with us. And so we want you to engage directly with the product managers. From these conferences, we created tools like RUM, which was a suggestion by IT admins that were attending JNUC a couple of years ago. We created OS, we created some other things as well. And so what we want you to do ideally is just continue to engage with us in constructive engagement, constructive criticism, whatever it is you want to do, but engage with us. And so at the end of this presentation, I'll put up my email address. So again, feel free to directly email me. I won't change it for another 24 hours. So you've got that 24-hour window. And if you're so angry that you want to leave before the end of the presentation, it's karl.gibson@adobe.com. So I mentioned there has been a couple of tools that we have created that come directly from here. There's CCP, there's OS, there's RUM. And I mentioned why we're doing the conferences. Something else that's kind of new is around enterprise requirement. It's not that pretty of a subject, but essentially we have a software lifecycle review in Adobe. One of the things that we've worked hard on this year is to make sure that enterprise requirements are represented at every stage for the product teams. And so when they come to us and they want to get approval, one of the things that they have to do is they have to go through, they have to fill out those enterprise requirements. We need to make sure that they license in the right way, they update in the right way, that they have sufficient proxy support for the different network topologies. And that's also something that we worked hard on this year as well, in that just prior to the release last June of the 2015 products, the help page for proxy support for the Adobe products basically just listed the Creative Cloud products don't presently support proxy environments. And when you're a company that's very much moving from perpetual to online to subscription, you really need to make sure that if you're going to sell into the enterprise, you need to have support for different network topologies. So we're obviously a little bit late to the game on that one, but we focus a lot this year on that. And we've added support for WPAD, for PAC. We're in the process of adding support for Kerberos. So those types of things are represented at the enterprise requirements phase, and all of the product teams now have come on board with that. So there's a couple of things that I want to cover today. So I want to give a general overview of the Creative Cloud. How many companies here have moved across to the Creative Cloud? You've had some experience of it. Okay, so quite a lot. So I just wanted to provide an overview of that, what it kind of means for Creative Cloud business. I'll show a quick video of that. It is a little bit marketing spinning, but it does cover more than I can cover in 2 minutes. And then I'm going to touch on the Cloud Packager, which we released this year. I'll touch on some improvements that we've made to RUM, which again are something that's been requested for a long time from this community. I'll touch on our new installer technology, our proposed new installer technology. This is always a little bit of a contentious issue with Adobe because we use our own proprietary installer technology called RIBS. But we're evaluating something new, and I wanted to bring it to this forum to get feedback on that. I want to touch on the enterprise dashboard and what improvements have been made in FY15. I want to touch on identity, the different types of identity that Adobe offers to enterprise customers. And hopefully we'll be able to do a quick demo of the dashboard. I don't know how many people have seen the dashboard before, but I want to do that. And then if there's time left, we'll do some questions. Q&A is always lively at this particular conference. So what I'll try and do is pan out as much as I possibly can, leave very little room for questions, and then we'll all go to lunch. So, but if the demo doesn't work, it means we've got more time for questions. Okay. So I wanted to show a quick video. It's going to give you an overview of the Creative Cloud and what this means for enterprise and for business.
The Creative Cloud ushers in a whole new era in creativity for businesses, large and small. It's everything your team needs to do its best work. Your Creative Cloud membership lets you download every Adobe Creative app and service as soon as they're released. With the latest versions of Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, and more, there's no limit to what you can make. And now, we're taking the power of our desktop applications and bringing them to mobile devices. You can capture inspiration on the go and bring it into your creative process. Start your project on an iPhone, continue on the iPad, and finish it using your favorite desktop application. New Adobe Creative Sync makes your assets available anywhere. They instantly appear when you need them, in your Creative Cloud libraries and across your desktop, web, and mobile apps. And they can be shared with anyone with a Creative Cloud account. So it's easier to collaborate and keep your designs consistent. And now, the new Adobe Stock service gives you access to over 40 million high-quality images that you can find, buy, and manage, all while working right within your applications. Here's what makes Creative Cloud really powerful for businesses. It simplifies your organization's deployment and license management. You can deploy apps, services, and updates the way that works for your organization. Install licenses centrally for more control, or let users do it themselves. It's up to you. Streamlined license management makes it easy to add and reassign seats to scale up to meet the growing needs of your business. And when questions come up, we're here to help with 24/7 technical support. Your team gets exclusive phone access to Adobe product experts, plus hundreds of video tutorials and step-by-step product guides to keep their skills fresh. You can choose from 2 Creative Cloud plans designed for business: Creative Cloud for Teams or Creative Cloud for Enterprise. Creative Cloud for Teams is built for small to medium businesses or creative teams within larger organizations. It gives you hassle-free administration and easy deployment. Creative Cloud for Enterprise is ideal for large organizations and businesses or departments that want enterprise-level features. If you need unlimited support, single sign-on authentication, encrypted content, or content behind your firewall, Creative Cloud for Enterprise is right for you. Whether you choose Creative Cloud for Teams or Creative Cloud for Enterprise, you'll get a secure and easy way to manage your licenses while empowering your users to collaborate and create amazing content. It's simply a better way of working together.
Okay, so that kind of gives you a bit of an overview of Creative Cloud. As I said, it is a little bit marketing focused, but it does give an overview and it captures deployment, captures licensing, and some of the workflows that your users may potentially be using. Last year, I mentioned on stage that I'm not what you would consider a creative. I don't use our products all that much in terms of the intricacies of InDesign and Premiere and everything else. I touch upon it a little bit, but I think it's never been a better time, a more exciting time to be a creative user. And some IT admins will be creative, some won't. But what happens is that IT inevitably are left with the task of enabling these creatives, and that's what we do. So when we see photos coming from any enterprise, when we see videos, those type of things, well then it's IT who have generally enabled those creatives by making that software available to them, by making the latest updates available to them, and by allowing them to sign in or not sign in, depending on how that you've licensed, and giving them assets to fonts and stocks and everything else. And so I think from an IT perspective, it can get very complicated, especially with the Creative Cloud, in that you now have more consistent updates. It's not just one big release every year. Education's a little bit different, obviously, and sometimes you'll just do it once a year. But it has become a little bit more complicated, or it can be a little bit more simplified, depending on how you actually deploy it out. So if you are in an environment where you're giving your users access to self-service, they can install the applications themselves, they can sign in, they can install the updates themselves. That obviously takes some of the aspects away from IT and empowers the end users. That's not always possible. And then the other alternative is that IT still needs to package up the applications, the updates, and you keep control, you give them a serial number. Whatever way it is that you do it, it can be as complex or simple. And so that's where I kind of mentioned that, continue to engage with us. Last year when I was on stage here, I wasn't as grey. I'm starting to get very grey, particularly in the ginger beard. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I've struggled with it for a long time now. I've accepted my gingerness and it's going away. But when I was on stage, I mentioned that we were starting to move away from the Creative Cloud Packager. And the Creative Cloud Packager was very much based on signing in, going to Adobe, looking for what the latest applications are, and then pulling them down, packaging them, and packaging up the updates. And it was better than the AMI days where you had to point the product binary, point AMI to the product binaries. But it still required work from IT, and there was still a certain amount of knowledge that IT had to have in terms of how they work with our software. As I mentioned, we use the proprietary installer technology, and so what we wanted to do was introduce a level of opaqueness into that kind of workflow. So we mentioned that we were working on the Cloud Packager and what the potential benefits of those things were. And then earlier this year, we actually introduced the Cloud Packager and the functionality that we'd shown on stage. And so we've moved across from the Creative Cloud Packager to a certain degree. That we don't have full functionality parity with the Packager. You can't use the serial number at the moment. But what we've done is that when you sign into the dashboard, we pick up what your entitlement with Adobe is. Based on that entitlement, we pre-create packages for you. So if you have an entitlement with Adobe that gives you Photoshop single app, gives you InDesign, it gives you Complete, it gives you the video apps, when you go to this Packager tab, or when you go to the Deployment tab, you see those packages there. You'll see a package for Mac, and you'll see a package for Windows. Who's seen this functionality and used some of it? Okay. So I think that's slightly indicative of the amount of people who have so far adopted named licensing. Still a lot of people are deploying using serial numbers, and they were waiting on other things that Adobe were going to come out with in terms of identity management. But this is the direction that we've started to move, and what we've done is we've given you the ability still to change some of the settings. We give you the ability to change the language, the ability to enable, disable the apps panel, enable, disable updates, those type of things. But the idea is really just to introduce that level of opaqueness where you don't have to do that packaging step, and introduce a certain amount of collaboration as well, in that if you've got a decentralized IT or you've got IT in multiple regions, well then you've got these packages that can be created by one IT admin and downloaded by the rest. And then that introduces a certain amount of standardization as well, where you don't have each IT creating their own package at any given time. You download it, you push it out, and it kind of introduces that aspect of standardization. So I mentioned RUM. And RUM is a command line utility that was conceived of here at JNUC. And it essentially allows you to remotely invoke the updater on a client system. So if you're using something like Casper, well, then you can send the command that invokes the updater on the client system, and those updates will be retrieved from either an internal Adobe update server or adobe.com, depending on how you set that client up. But one of the things that we heard again and again around RUM is that it didn't offer the ability to list what updates were available for a given client. And so you can't just go to the command line, put it in, it will show you what updates are available. So RUM now does that. We've also introduced the ability to download the updates, cache them, and then install them at a later time as well. So you can list out the updates, then download them, and then install them at a later time on a reboot or something like that, if that's what you want. And then the last request was around introducing some verbose logging for RUM and when it succeeds or when it fails, why it failed, what update it failed on. So again, that's something that we've added. And this was done in the last month or so, and will probably go out in the next week or so. And this is one of the things that I would very much like to get feedback on, this and the next slide. But if there's anything here that you've used RUM, you still think it lacks certain features, or there's ways that it does things, and I can show you how it presently does these things. But if there's anything that you want changed, well, then come up to us, let me know. I'll speak with the engineers, and we'll get it done over the next week or two before we actually go out and we ship it. Okay? Was somebody just putting down a laptop, or did we get one clap? I wasn't sure. It's a brave man who claps Adobe. I appreciate it. I actually got, I was meant to get Adobe t-shirts and jackets and stuff like that delivered as well, but they actually got held up in shipment. So you're definitely getting a t-shirt later on. Whether or not you wear it is up to you. So the other thing that this slightly contentious issue is around the installer technology that Adobe uses. We brought in this installer technology called Ribs. When we started moving to the Creative Suite, it was a way to bind the products together. It's what a lot of the licensing and update technology is reliant upon. But what we've looked at doing is evolving that. And we've come up with a new installer technology, and this kind of gives you some of the benefits to it, in that in this slide, ignore the fact that it's a Windows machine, I apologize. In this slide, basically I installed Illustrator using the Ribs technology. It took around 57 minutes and 32 seconds before I was told that it was installed and ready to use. This could be a slightly exaggerated scenario in that I don't think it normally takes 57 minutes, but that's what it did take on this day. And then in the second scenario, I signed in with an ID that was entitled to use this new installer technology. And by the time I clicked on install, and by the time I got this notification to say that it was installed and ready to use, it was 7 minutes. So there was serious optimization in terms of how it actually installs, the size of the footprint that it uses. And so it's a huge improvement. There's always going to be that question around why are we looking at just evolving that technology versus investing in moving the point products across to native flat packages, that type of thing. That's a discussion, again, that I'm happy to have, and I think it's the right juncture to have that discussion at. So I think if that's a serious pain point for you, well, then come up, articulate to me how, if we were to move across to native, it would make your lives a little bit easier. And I'll certainly at this juncture go back and make sure that's adequately represented before we start moving in any other direction. There is some other additional benefits in terms of not just the installation and the footprint, but we will then have the ability to do stuff like packages with multi-languages embedded into it. So when you go to either CCP or you go to the cloud packager, you'll be able to select multiple languages that can be included in the package versus having to create a package for every single language that you need to support. So those type of things will become available to us, and we'll get language files in essence. So there is some benefits that we're kind of weighing up. So the enterprise dashboard. So I mentioned in the description of the presentation that this has very much been the year of Creative Cloud Enterprise at Adobe, at least. And so we've worked very, very hard to bring this enterprise offering up to scratch in terms of what we're offering enterprise customers, because enterprise requirements are completely different than individual. They're completely different than team. You need different ways to manage identities. You need different admin roles potentially for your organization. You need ways to get those your LDAP directory up into the cloud to manage it or to keep them in sync. Those type of things are unique to enterprise, and we've been very much focused on delivering as many of those in 2015 as we possibly could. And so we did introduce SSO and federated identity this year. We have just announced that we're doing granular admin roles, and so if you've got a procurement person in your organization, they may not need access to as much of the dashboard as IT do. So you may have a procurement role that can specifically assign licenses. You may have an IT role that can specifically download the packages, those type of things. And so granular admin roles have been introduced this year. The ability to specify the service entitlement for a group. And so when you select a group, you may want them to have access to certain services and not access to others. So that level of granularity was also introduced this year and is available in the dashboard. We have also just announced our user management SDK. And so this is just a method. If you're using federated identity, which we delivered this year, well, then you need a way essentially to get your directory in sync with the dashboard. And so before, we only gave you the ability to upload via a spreadsheet, which is not a terribly good solution. And so we introduced then this user management SDK, which was announced in the past week or so, I think. And so that will hopefully help make that transition easier, and you can do CRUD operations on it. We introduced managed services as well. So instead of multi-tenant, you can have single tenant. You can have all of this behind your own firewall. We introduced the document cloud as well into the enterprise dashboard. So previously the dashboard was just for managing your Creative Cloud entitlement. Now that also works for the document cloud. And then the last thing was the cloud packager as well. So that functionality that I mentioned a second ago. So these were all things that were done in 2015. We obviously have a lot more to do in 2016, but I think it certainly helps a lot of enterprises make that transition across to using named licensing, giving their users access to the services, and then obviously hopefully in tandem with that is the ability to do a certain amount of self-service. Something I kind of mentioned around self-service, and it'll be interesting again to get feedback on, is that one of the things you can do is if you give your users access to the Creative Cloud desktop application, and this is where they obviously install the applications, the updates, where they access their assets, all of those things. In the cloud packager, you have the ability to disable the apps panel. And the reason why you do that is if your end users don't have admin privileges, so you can disable the apps panel, but then leave them with the rest of the services and access to those services or whatever you've conferred for their entitlement. One of the things that we've toyed around with and we've discussed and we've built a prototype in Adobe is around the ability to have that desktop application run with elevated privileges. And so at deployment time, you can specify that this is going to run with elevated privileges. So in essence, all you need to do is actually supply your end users with access to the desktop app. They can then install applications and updates themselves and very much self-manage it and take away that kind of pain point from IT if that's something that people were looking to do. Again, we've built a prototype on this, and so it's really just a question of, is this something that IT admins want us to build? Is this something that will make your life easier? And so far, from the discussions that we've had with customers, it's been very much yes. They would like us to build that functionality. So we may go and we may build it, but how it actually functions and how it operates and the level of granularity that it gives to you is something that we'd like to get feedback on. So again, karl.gibson@adobe.com for the next 24 hours. I mentioned identity, and identity is a little bit of a technical subject in the fact that we have 3 types of identity that we offer our enterprise customers. We offer Adobe IDs, we offer enterprise IDs, and then we offer federated IDs. And we do this because different organizations have different requirements. We really just wanted to give everybody the options that they need. And if you've got contractors and all this type of thing coming in, well, then you need different options, essentially. And so rather than just go through a slide that builds it out, that's a little bit complicated. Again, I just wanted to just show a quick video which gives you an overview of the identity types that's available to you as an enterprise customer.
Simplifying your identity management options with Adobe keeps your teams engaged and equipped with the latest digital tools and services. While your business is growing and shifting, your teams can stay connected, whether they're working across the office or across the globe. Adobe Creative Cloud and Document Cloud include support for identity management options, which enterprise customers can use to customize deployments securely and efficiently for all their users. The Adobe Enterprise Dashboard empowers IT to easily equip users with access to the latest apps and services from Creative Cloud and Document Cloud. It allows collaboration across desktop, mobile devices, and services. Set up various account types with license access and never lose track of users or groups. To give your organization flexibility and control, Adobe offers several named user options to meet your software deployment needs. Streamline account management and leverage your existing user directory single sign-on by hosting and controlling user access, or just control account access while leaving the hosting to Adobe. Contractors can quickly integrate into your workflow while allowing IT to maintain security standards. And eliminate the need to log in by going offline with serialized deployment. It's up to you to decide how to manage your users' access to the Adobe apps and services they need. IT administrators stay in control and benefit from a lightened workload. Streamline your identity management with Adobe and keep your team on track everywhere.
So again, it just gives you a little bit of an overview. Again, it's very marketing focused. The guy has a great voice. It's hypnotic. But really, this has been a journey, I think, for when we initially launched the dashboard. We just had Adobe IDs, which again didn't, it worked for some companies, and some companies moved across to it early, but it didn't work for every company. And then the big question was around when we were going to have SSO and federated ID. And in between those, we delivered the enterprise IDs. And so it's been very much a journey taking into account enterprise requirements as we go along and building out that functionality. And again, a lot of this came in 2015, and I think we've done a good job, I think, in delivering a lot this year. But again, it comes down to your requirements. So we're going to see if a demo is going to work. I don't know if I managed to get a Wi-Fi connection. Oh, it looks like I did. So who has seen the enterprise dashboard before? Okay. So we have two dashboards at Adobe. We have the team dashboard and we have the enterprise dashboard. Again, the team gives you a certain level of granularity and gives you certain features, and enterprise gives you more features that are enterprise specific. So you don't get the likes of federated identity for team, and you do get it for enterprise. I'm not going to stay signed in. Not that I don't trust Jamf. So when you sign in, the very first thing we do is we give you an overview. Let me try and drag this over. When you sign in, the first thing that we do is we actually give you an overview of what your plans are with Adobe. So again, this could be Creative Cloud, it could be Document Cloud. We give you an overview of, if you have managed services, what your configuration in terms of your identity type is, and you'll see obviously Complete Plan, Illustrator. Then you've got the ability to go in here. You've got the ability to select your groups. You create groups, and you confer what their entitlement is. You'll see, complete 2 gig. You'll see. Some with management services, some with Document Cloud Premium. So those groups you can set up for your entitlement. And then you've got your users then, which obviously you're going to go in, manage, and confer entitlements. You can see your pending invitations. You can see your import results if you use the CSV file to import. And obviously now if you've got the user SDK, well, then you're going to import a little bit differently in here. But this is where your users will reside. You've got the identity tab here, which is where you configure what type of identity you're going to use. If you're going to claim a domain, well, then it's going to be here in the identity tab. You've got your deployment snap-in. You've got Creative Cloud and Document Cloud. Who says we're not one company? And so you've got a choice of the two of these. And so when you select Creative Cloud, again, what we do is we pick up what your entitlement is with Adobe. We show you the packages that were created for you by us. We show you the ones that were created by you. So if this was something that you used Creative Cloud Packager, we upload the metadata to the dashboard. And then you've got this kind of collaboration aspect of where you can see packages that have been created by others as well. So when you select packages here, you'll see packages that I've created. You'll see ones that have been created by Adobe. And we can drop this down and we can filter. We can say, show me the created automatically packages. I mentioned that we can drop down here, show Illustrator. And we can pick the language. We can toggle these on and toggle these off. We can change the architecture for Windows, which you guys don't care about. And then we can select build here. And this just gives us a confirmation model of what is included in this package. So the applications, the updates, we can go back, we can edit these, and we can also go down at a deeper level to understand what updates specifically are in this package that I'm going to be getting. And then I simply just go, I select build and download. This waits for a second. And then up the top here, you'll see that the status changes to waiting, and then you'll see it to build. And then actually what it will do is it will pass the job across to the browser to download that application or that package itself, and that's it. So it kind of moves a lot of the workflow away from CCP. It has these pre-created packages. I think it does introduce a level of opaqueness into the workflow, and so hopefully this is making your lives a little bit easier. And again, I'd like to get feedback on if you've already used this, if there's any functionality that's missing. As I said, it doesn't have specific feature parity with CCP yet. Serial numbers is the obvious one. Update packages is the other one that we're focused on. But if there's anything else that you'd like for this to do, well, then let us know. And again, I'll build it into a sprint and I'll get the team to do it. I'll ask the team to do it. I won't tell them. But they can tell me no. Yeah, and so you've also got the ability to delete your previous packages. And so you can go in here, you can select, and you can delete then the previous packages. Because what we looked at initially when we were looking at the analytics for CCP is that on average we were getting around 4 or 5 packages that were created per admin. And when we initially launched the dashboard, and it was really just about the metadata of your package, we didn't include the ability to delete a package. It wasn't just purely because of our arrogance that we thought, why would you want to delete an Adobe package? It was because of those initial analytics that we were getting back. But then it turned into an issue in that a lot of admins were building a lot of packages, and we were getting a dashboard which would have 100, 200, 300 packages and upwards. So then we thought it was a good idea to introduce the ability to delete a package. Again, we get there in the end eventually. So you can go, you can delete that, you can delete another admin's package, and that's really just because if an admin leaves the organization, well then you're going to want to be able to tidy up their packages. The only thing you can't do is if you can't be destructive in terms of, I'm actually going to cancel this because I'm probably saturating the bandwidth here. If another admin is building a package, you can't cancel their package builds. That's the only action that we restrict you from doing. So yeah, so that's the dashboard. I don't know if I've dragged this out enough so that we can't have any questions. I don't think so. So I think that's the next thing that we're going to move on to. Did I mention that I have a wife and 2 dependents? Oh. I mentioned it was hypnotic. I didn't mean you have to watch it again. It's just what it's telling me to do. So we've gone through the demo. Let's touch on some questions. But while we're doing that, I want to put up as well the Twitter account that we have and also my email address. So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, let's give Karl a round of applause quick. I wrote down a couple of things I thought really interesting about what Karl was talking about. One, I think it was 9 times he said, email me, contact me, get in touch. So the engage with us slide wasn't just a slide to say that. You said it a bunch, and then this is his email. And when he changes that, mine is john.miller@jamfsoftware.com, and I know how to get a hold of him. So one way or the other, we'll find him. The other stuff that I thought was really interesting, just from also being in a product perspective, and sometimes it feels like when feedback comes, what happens with that? I don't know if anybody else heard this, but while talking about Run, you said, we got some stuff done, we're done, we're ready to ship in a week, but if there's something that we hear today, we'll get it into that in the next week. So he's not kidding.
No, and I think the important part of that is that there's a lot of nuances that you guys understand that I don't. I'm not in that role anymore. I am obviously engaged through you, but you see those workflows a lot more than I do these days and a lot more than my team do these days. And so that's why when we're building these, it's important that we get your feedback and that they're built in the right way. And that's something that we can definitely do.
Yeah, absolutely. So really good stuff. We got a couple questions, so that means people are excited. So we'll start right here in the front. And what we're going to do is question, try to yell it, and then I'll repeat it just so we have it in the recording, and then Karl will answer. So right here in the front.
So it's great to see that you guys are bettering the Creative Cloud Packager from Emmy, but we're all at a Jamf conference and we all are pushing self-service. Wouldn't it be nice for us to just go into self-service for those of us with some relationship, kind of like what self-service has with that, with Apple, with Adobe, and then just create policies, check a button and say, yes, let's push Photoshop to this person or Photoshop Illustrator, or whatever the arrangements are, and Casper does that back-end connectivity like it does with the App Store. Why are we building, downloading, re-pushing, and why are we doing that when it already exists?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the existing workflow is to use the packager and then import into self-service. What you're, if I'm understanding it correctly, what you're proposing is essentially that rather than going to the dashboard and initializing this build process, what you'll do is you'll go into Casper and then you'll select that these are the applications and then it would potentially go and fetch these updates on behalf, basically. Yeah, I mean, that makes absolute sense. There's a couple of things that need to happen, and we are engaged with Jamf, not necessarily on that specific workflow, but in and around updates, and how that's going to function when they ship their patch management stuff. So we're already engaged in those conversations. We don't want to duplicate effort. Again, we've got RUM, we've got OST, but if Jamf is going to offer a way that IT admins really want to manage updates, well then it should all tie in and it should support Adobe, because Adobe is one of the things that you're going to probably have to look after. And so we're engaged with Jamf around that, and hopefully we'll come up with a solution that will help, and then we can start to look at potentially doing that as well around the dashboard. I absolutely don't want to duplicate work, and if we can figure out a way that can tie in with the dashboard here, well then yeah, we should do it. I mean, as automated as possible, I think we should try and do.
And I wrote that down as well from a Jamf perspective. So let's come right over here, yeah.
Just learning about RUM for the first time, so that's great. I take care of a bunch of Mac labs, and the users they don't have the admin password, so I'd love to be able to do this. And one cool thing I noticed in Apple's software update command line is they have you can go software update --all, in which case it'll see, okay, what updates I need and install all of them. The other thing it doesn't do is reboot when it says, hey, you need to reboot. But it'd be nice to see similar functionality in RUM if it's not already there.
Yeah, the way that I've kind of envisaged this is that, so at the moment, all you can do with RUM is you can tell it to be specific, and you use a channel ID and you say, update Photoshop, and it goes and it does it at that given time. Now, what it does do that we didn't mention previously is it already kind of caches it itself. And so what happens if it fails on the next invoke, when you next invoke RUM, it will actually pull from the cache. But the way I kind of see this is, the ability to list what's available for that given client. You can report that back, and then you can cache all of the updates, and then you can just install all of them. That's the way it's going to ship. And so I think, because a lot of the time what you're going to have is you'll want to do this on multiple clients at the same time. You may want to make sure that they're, out of all of the Adobe applications, do it on the next reboot. And if that cache is already there, you know that it's going to be more successful if the application isn't launched. Well, then that's the way it should be. So, yeah.
Two questions. One, there seems to be one line in one blog post on all of Adobe that mentions El Capitan and SIP, and no documentation seems to be updated. And RUM is broken to the best. So we're trying to figure out how do we get RUM to work, because it's in user SBIN. And
Yeah.
the new binary is user local SBIN, which when I just searched the other day, there isn't a single Google hit on user local bin remote update, even though that seems to be the new binary.
Yeah.
And then the second, so the El Capitan and SIP. And the second question is, do you have any thoughts on a reliable way to remove old versions of Creative Suite, Creative Cloud? Because the current ones, older than Creative Cloud 2014, are, at least in our experience, again, across thousands of machines, wholly unreliable and
So to the first question, we did change the location of rum for El Capitan, and that should be on the help documentation where we're actually putting it. And so is it an issue that...
Well, we have thousands in the field, so what do we do about those? I mean, we could script it with Casper or something. And,
Yeah, do you know what? I was on a call with the team, and we discussed over this, in that we were talking about whether or not we were going to replace the location with a new location, or we were going to leave it intact with the existing deployments, because then you're going to have potentially 2 locations for rum. But what I was very cognizant of is that I didn't want to break any any existing workflows with the change. And so what would happen is that you would create an update package with CCP, you'd deploy that out or something, and then all of a sudden we would change the location of rum. You wouldn't be aware of it, you'd run your script and it would fail. So I was quite conscious that we didn't do that. And so what I wanted to do is, for existing deployments, leave rum in place where it actually is, and then for new deployments, we would change it to the new location to coincide with El Capitan.
but the problem is if you upgrade to El Capitan, it's already broken.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Rich Trouton was just talking about El Capitan at SIP in the conference across the way, so take a look at his notes that I know he posts, and he's really good about that. But he did reference some sim links and things that can reference that might be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a way for us to make that easier, I've no issues with doing it. It was a conscious decision on my part, more than the team's, that's the way we should leave it. But if it wasn't the right decision, well, then we can certainly revisit. But I just didn't want to break any existing workflows, basically.
Just a general question, just to kind of get an idea. Applications that you guys are using as far as LCAP support, are most applications supporting it already? Where are we at? Like, is this a huge hurdle that you've had to kind of manage over the last couple months and prepping for? I don't know a good way to measure this other than who's got half their applications working on LCAP? More than half, not just 50%, more than half? Okay, so just a few. So this is a big thing. This is a big deal. Okay, cool. I just wanted to, more than 70%. Is anybody having great success with LCAP and movement? Cool, a couple. Okay, that sounded more snark than I meant it to. Now what I meant to, just more like finding the pace at which the tools that are used by your users are supporting the new version and what's happening with LCAP. I know we're a little bit early as far as LCAP's been out for 2.5 weeks, so yeah, just kind of curiosity. So
there was a second part to that question, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Besides rum, what was?
That was a reliable way to remove Creative Suite and Creative Cloud,
Right.
especially older than 24.
Right. So since the days of AMI, we've been producing uninstalled PKG files. When we produce the install PKG, we have the uninstall PKG, and for Windows, we have the MSI, which can be used with the uninstall switch. And so that's the way that we've generally advised, is that if you want to remove a previous version first, although they can coincide or coexist, well, then you push out that uninstalled PKG file, and it should remove them relatively gracefully.
That means you have them, and you don't have thousands
Right.
of machines that you may not have installed it on.
Right. That's all we can do is that was the advised method that we had in terms of that's how we built it out. I mean, you do have the cleaner tool, which is a very brutal, forceful way of getting rid of everything. It's generally not something that we advise is to use the cleaner tool. It's really if there's just residual files there after you use the uninstall PKG file. And so, I mean, I don't know, we looked over the years basically at being able to just produce a file that would just kind of blast everything if you'd never had a CCP or AMI package, but we just couldn't figure out a way to do it gracefully. Now, the Creative Cloud Desktop application offers the ability to remove the previous version first to the user. So when you're installing 2015, it asks you if you want to remove 2014 first. And so that's a more graceful way to do it, but we couldn't do the same thing in Enterprise and keep it kind of automated to a certain degree.
I just want to comment on that because I find that even if you have the uninstaller and you then updated versions of the software over time, the uninstaller no longer works to uninstall because you've installed a specific version. It's no longer valid. So I don't know about that with 2015, but 2014 and CS6, CC and CS6, I found that to be true.
That's a fair point. So, I mean, ideally is it an option then when you're creating the package or you're creating the CCP package that, you have the ability then just to select somewhere in the configuration basically to remove any previous found versions before installing the new version? I mean, is that ideally what you want? Okay.
Or put in the Creative Cloud Cleaner tool as an option.
That's not a rule.
Yeah, we don't even talk to that product team. They're banished.
The thing about it was
Like IT are in the basement, these guys are lower.
machines where they
Yeah.
it's pirate software.
Yeah.
Right? So they'll come to me. They've paid for Creative Cloud through our school, but they have some pirate version of the old version, and not that you have to support that, of course.
Yeah.
But the reality is some of them have this stuff installed, and then we end up using the cleaner tool to
Yep.
get rid of it. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's still some remnant of the Adobe Application Manager somewhere. That, so you have to nuke and pay the whole machine.
So I think, we never want to be in a situation where you have to nuke the whole machine. I want to avoid that. Somebody dropped me an email about the same thing earlier on today. And so if that is the case, we obviously want to stop that from happening. The only thing that I can think is if we introduce that functionality into CCP, well then what you're talking about is there's inevitably going to be more of a failure rate when you're deploying that package. Because if for any reason it hits issues, users using it, anything like that, well then the whole thing is going to fail and the install will fail. And that's just something that I would be conscious of as well.
There's been, this gentleman here has got his hand up, yeah.
My question has to do with version parity
Mm-hmm.
for, in our case, for higher education. And so in the classroom, once we deploy something, we want it to stay the same for that experience throughout that semester, so instructors aren't having to retool and change their lesson plan and stuff. When the students who are in those courses at home are on the home Creative Cloud, so their default is forced to everything new, and our default is forced to everything stay. And then documents sometimes that come from there that are newer features that have certain components
Right.
they can't open them up. And how do you solve, what's your best, short of a sidearm and 6 rounds, what's your best guess to solve that dilemma?
Change the file format.
Could you repeat the question? Could you just repeat the question?
Yeah, so basically when your students have at-home usage and they can install the applications themselves, they can obviously, update and they will lose some consistency when they come into the classroom, if the classroom is kind of at a static version or hasn't pushed out updates and that type of thing. So just around the feature parity. It's an extremely difficult problem to solve, to be perfectly honest, because they have admin privileges of their own system. I mean, you can potentially give them a package basically that has updates turned off, but they can just turn them back on themselves. So unless it's set at some sort of an entitlement level, well then that's where the difficulty comes in. Now at an entitlement level, you could say that turn off updates, and so when they sign in, no updates are visible at an entitlement level, or specific applications or specific versions are only there when they sign in. And I think that's the only way that you'll be able to solve that issue. It's just at an entitlement level to do it versus at, so.
In our case, we don't even pay for the students' Creative Cloud. They're doing that on their own.
Oh, really?
It's completely out of our control. So
Yeah.
our options are enable and push updates all the time and have a potentially unstable environment in the classroom, or have the feature or compatibility, incompatibility between the versions.
Yeah, I mean,
I see.
I think file formatting shouldn't be a problem. Well, it shouldn't be a problem. I'm not going to say it isn't a problem, but it shouldn't be a problem. But in terms of the version parity, I think that's something that's going to be a little bit more difficult, especially if they've got their own Creative Cloud account. I mean, there's no way that we can restrict it in any way. So I think it's a very difficult problem to solve.
Other questions? Anything from this side of the room? I feel like I'm picking favorites over here. Anybody over here got something? All right, right in front.
So I'm currently running an internal Adobe Update server, which is great, but I'd really like to be able to dedicate you to the channel, the dev and test channel. But I deploy my team first, and then once that's done, the rest of the agency to that production channel. Is that anything that's come up in future requests?
It hasn't, but what we frequently find with OST is just the ability to be a little bit more specific and granular around what products and what updates are going to be hosted. So now it's just a pretty dumb server that pulls everything that's on Adobe's update feed. And so the ability to be a little bit more granular is something that we've heard a couple of times. The other thing is the ability to have OST expand beyond updates and also host applications. And so even if you're installing via the Creative Cloud desktop app or something like that, well then the ability to have applications pulled from an internal server as well. And that could be an aspect of self-service as well, and how we evolve that with Jamf to that kind of earlier question. Maybe it's something like that where you have an internal application repository or something. So those features we have heard of, and they're on the backlog. It's a little bit in limbo at the moment, OST, because this new installer technology will require us to make some changes, and I don't want to commit any features until we've figured out if we're fully committed to that first. But to me, OST needs some love. It hasn't been loved in a long time. And a lot of people use it, especially a lot of government and everything else. So I think that would be a big win if we can build up the features for that.
Similar to what I'm doing on my Versatile internal Apple update server.
Mm-hmm.
That works great.
Yep. Yeah, and from our perspective, I mean, it's something we obviously want to encourage is more frequent updating. And if an internal update server helps that, well, then absolutely we'll do that. So it's really just a matter of getting the engineering bandwidth to be able to concentrate on OST versus trying to do something with CCP or the cloud packager stuff. And the cloud, I mean, CCP supports well in excess of 100 applications for the Creative Cloud, the updates, the archive versions. And so there's a lot, and there's over 600 packages created every single day. So that's generally where we gravitate towards when we have to do a fix or something like that. But absolutely, I'm trying my best to get some bandwidth with the team to improve OST. So send those suggestions to me as well.
So I think we got time for one more question, and then lunch is happening. So how about right in the middle here, the white shirt looks like you.
Just a question about, you have so many different tools, and obviously different organizations will approach Adobe software different ways. What's the best way to approach the Adobe team to kind of plan that out for any kind of enterprise? To contact them directly, or to reach out to our account rep? What do you suggest?
Yeah.
Basically build a plan for.
Hi. The difficulty is, I think you will go to your account reps, and I think that should be the general way that you go, and then hopefully they'll give you the response that they should give you, and they'll pass you on to a CSM that's in Adobe who's technical, who we engage with internally, and they should be technical enough to be able to provide the right solution for you. But if that doesn't happen, well then feel free then to drop me an email if it's in the next 24 hours.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Karl, for being here with us, for spending time. It's important enough that the 24-hour thing's a joke. But yeah, thank you very much, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.